Another question we got from Instagram is, when do you suggest parents start to talk to kids about racism, and how should they start these conversations?
I saw that question. I loved it, right? Primarily because I work with kids, and this question comes up a lot. And I think the initial reaction a lot of parents have is that I don't want to scare my child. I don't want to increase their anxiety. I don't want to give them the parent worries of the world. And I totally understand that that is the position as a protector, as a provider that you want to sit in with your child. I also think it's important to understand that sometimes we want to be a part of helping our kids make that narrative, though, right? So if they're responsible at 7, 5, whatever age to make their own narrative, they're doing it with that developmental level and understanding, right? But when we can get involved in that process with them and join them, then we can have conversations and have an understanding of where they are. So I think the first thing is to really understand, what is your child thinking, right? Like, what does your child already know? Your child isn't existing in a vacuum, unaware of everything that's going on around them. They're watching you. They're hearing your podcast, your news stories. They see the things you talk about with your friends and your partner. And I think it's important to not underestimate that. And so I would first begin with some understanding and some discussion beginning around, what do you think about that? What have you heard? Like, as things kind of come up. I think there are a ton of resources out there related to different TV programs that you can watch with your child. Even Sesame Street put out something recently around how to talk to your kid about race, how to talk to them about racism. And I think those types of things are really good conversation starters, right? Books around things related to this are really good conversation starters. And I think it's important for parents to know it's not this, when do I talk to them about racism? I got to have this talk and then we're done, right? Like, it's not a talk. It's integrated, right? Like, it's happening in the world. So I think it's integrated throughout your experiences with talking with them. And you don't have to feel the pressure of, let's do it all at once. Let's do it all today. You can get a temperature feel for what your child has been exposed to, or what they're thinking about, or what questions they have. And you just start there. And I think it's also important that we don't always think we have to have all the answers, right? We're human. We need to model for our kids that we don't always know everything. And so if there's something we don't know, wow, baby, that's a really good question. Mommy's going to take some time and think about that. Or I'm going to look into that a little bit more. Or maybe you can join me on, what do you think? Where can we find some of this information or these answers, and bring your child along on the journey? I think there's also, once, COVID passes, there's other creative ways. Like, you take, like, what are museums you can visit? What are projects you can have as like a family project to do, related to important milestones or key things that are in your city? I think there's so many ways that you can have conversations about race and racism, because it's happening, right? And so I think integrating, your child in a developmentally appropriate way, right? We want to make sure that they understand from their vantage point, and we don't want to increase their worry, but we want to be honest. And if we were to sit and say, oh, we're all just human, it's no differences, I think that really undervalues, the unique, the beauty of uniqueness and difference and celebrating diversity. And I think if we can integrate that and really send that message across all things, I think kids will really pick that up.
I think that's important. I like what you said about it being an evolving conversation too, because as kids have experiences, whether they witness things or have things directly happen and impact them, they're going to have more questions, right? Or it's going to be a different question or a different set of, conversations that need to occur. If they're in a new setting, if they're around different peers, if they're watching TV or social media, and I like also that you said that they're not naive. They've heard things or they've seen things. You're not starting
Yeah,
to
one study said they know, like, that kids are aware of race and racial bias as early as preschool, and that's just from a study, right? We don't know about people's anecdotal experiences more broadly, but that's young, and they can identify what's happening. And I think kids are smart. I always think parents think kids know less than what they do, maybe because I see a lot of adolescents that are trying to keep things away from their parents. So as you sit in that space, you're like, I think they know more than we probably let on to believe they do.